We thank you that you've come to join us in witnessing the birth, the inauguration of the Academy of International Affairs, Nigeria. Before we go on to the program proper, I think it is meet and proper that we pay homage to the Nigerian nation state and space. And so may I crave your indulgence, Your Excellencies, most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to be upstanding for the national anthem. Please, while we remain standing, I crave your indulgence as we commit this process into the able and capable hands of God Almighty by jointly reciting the second stanza of the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Please, we'll go. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and true, great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. Amen. Amen. Please, we may resume our seats. Thank you very much, most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are indeed honored to have here with us this morning a great mind who has graciously accepted to chair this occasion. He is indeed a father of the nation, and we are honored to have with us here His Excellency General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR. We thank you very much, sir, and we welcome you. We're also particularly honored and privileged to have representing His Excellency the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, the political advisor in the office of the President, our own Ambassador Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed. We thank you very much, sir, for honoring us with that morning. Thank you, sir. May I especially recognize the presence of the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar. Thank you very much, sir. We are honored. The great mind behind the Academy of International Affairs, Nigeria, is an erudite scholar, an elder statesman, a distinguished author who has served this country in many capacities, once as Foreign Affairs Minister. He put this together with his team. We are very honored to have in our midst Professor Bolaji Akinwande Akinyemi. Thank you very much, sir. We're indeed honored. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us all here this morning. Thank you, sir. We shall have an insight into what all this means later on when we meet some of the members of the team that has dreamt up this noble idea and have been running with it for quite a while. We're also particularly grateful that another distinguished Nigerian who has served the country in many capacities and today serves the African continent as president of Afrexim Bank is here with us. He will be leading us into some insights on development and finance issues in the Nigerian nation state later this morning. He will present the keynote address. I'm honored to welcome and specially recognize Professor Benedict Oram, CON. And we're also honored to have with us here, representing the Dean, Ambassador Paulette Ajovi Yekwe of the Embassy of the Republic of Benin. Thank you very much, ma'am. We are really very thankful. We're expecting some other distinguished guests to join us as we continue with the program. Most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the representative of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation is here with us. Please, may we welcome His Excellency, please. Malam Ibrahim Shehu, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Malam Ibrahim Shehu, MNI, Permanent Secretary, Ecological Projects Office, in the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Thank you and most welcome. We shall recognize other distinguished guests who are here with us as the program gets younger. But meanwhile, my name is Ohi Alegbe, and I'm not the only one doing this.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning once again, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. It is an honor to be in your midst today. A day where something remarkable, something new that would change the phase of diplomatic engagement has been birthed. And it is our pleasure to welcome you once again. My name is Ruth Aguele, and together with my big uncle here, will definitely ensure that this occasion is a success. Someone of high repute in Nigeria, someone who is well recognized in its various fields of endeavor, and someone who will be the first vice president of the Academy of International Affairs. Please, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, make welcome the former ambassador to the Scandinavian countries, former Federal Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Water Resources, someone who is a game changer. Please make welcome, Your Excellencies, Ambassador Dr. Godnose Egali, OON.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who is here represented, Your Excellency, our former head of state and the father of modern Nigeria, General Yakubu Gowon, our host, and for many of us who grew up in this house, our pride, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, and our convener, whom some of us had the great privilege of working with when we were diplomats, young diplomats, middle-level diplomats in this house, and continues to remain a great inspiration to all of us. the representative of the Secretary of Government of the Federation, other distinguished personalities here present, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody would have said he didn't recognize Professor Rama. I'll come to that later. I would like, on behalf of our convener, Professor Bolaji Akinwande Akinyemi, and the organizing committee in particular, to welcome all of us to this landmark event, which had long been awaited by many of us gathered here. And let me say that besides the fellows present here, about maybe 1/3 of us who are in different parts of the world are joining us virtually. This assemblage of fellows, including our honorees, all of whom are senior citizens, is a testimony of the collective resolve of we all, having individually served this country in different capacities within the foreign relations and diplomacy arena, and indeed as a body, to continue to do so in the most appropriate manner expected of us. Yes, you see many of our faces on television, and we continue to contribute, particularly Professor Akinyemi, but we've resolved as a group to come together under his leadership to form this academy. And it's interesting that one of the other foremost institutions within the foreign relations arena, the Association of Retired Career Ambassadors, both the immediate past or the outgoing president, that is Ambassador J.K. Shinkaye, who is seated there. He just handed over last week. And incoming president, Ambassador Joe Keshi, who is seated there. So you can see that we have the top echelon of over the professionals who were part of our diplomatic machinery, over 300 to 400 retired career ambassadors, all are here. And in our midst, a lot of our members are from the academia. Some of the most distinguished professors of international relations, strategic studies, diplomacy are here. We also have with us perhaps the most important group, our former ministers of foreign affairs, many that are quite still very active, are here with us, and we have some of the familiar faces. I can see Mrs. Viola Onwuleri, who was minister here. I'm sure at the right hand they'll be introduced, and my brother Chief, he doesn't like chief, but he's a chief. High Chief Odeya Jumogobia, who was one of our best foreign ministers, and others who are not here with us but are joining virtually today. We are particularly happy that this event is coming at a time when the federal government, led by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and our co-host of this event, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Maitama Tuga, who is actually one of us in the Foreign Service, have set out very clear and robust foreign policy blueprint for the country. This, we believe, opens new vistas and good cue on how the academy can work together with government to realize these lofty objectives in the interest of Nigeria and our right global standing. I want to specially welcome, and that's why I kept it to the end, our keynote speaker, one of our own and perhaps the greatest Pan-Africanist of our time, and a person who believes not just in the strength of Africa in terms of our global political standing, but to use the economic power as a bedrock for effective global intervention and interaction. And that is our keynote speaker, Professor Benedict Orama. He's here with us, and sometimes I wonder how he's able to clone and divide himself into so many places, because just a few days ago we saw you in Rwanda and the great job you are doing. So, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, once more on behalf of our founder and all of us, both here physically and those who are online, we welcome all of you and we look forward to having a great day. Thank you very much.
Ambassador God knows Bolade Igali ON, thank you for welcoming us all warmly and setting the tone for the activities this morning. We are indeed honored to be a part of this process. Thank you, sir. Most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me especially great pleasure to invite His Excellency, the father of modern Nigeria, the founder of ECOWAS, a most distinguished Nigerian who still leads us to pray for Nigerian nation. Please join me as we welcome General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR, for the chairman's opening remarks. Please, let's keep the applause going for His Excellency. Thank you for the standing ovation. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Your Excellency, thank you. Well done. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented by the Foreign Minister Alhaji Yusuf Tuga, Your Excellencies, former President, well, similarly, the two other honorary awardees that I was given was Ambassador Abdullahi Atta and his sister, Ambassador Judith Atta, both esteemed members of, in a way, my extended family. They have made invaluable contributions to our nation in their respectful fields. Although hailing from a revered royal lineage in Okene, Kogi State, their dedication to national service is most commendable. Their elder brother, Alhaji Abdul Aziz Atta, served as one of the secretary to the federal government, military government, and head of service. And he was the first to hold that particular position in Nigeria. Their other big brother, Alhaji Abdul Malik Atta, was Nigeria's pioneer High Commissioner at the United Kingdom in London, whom I knew when I was at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. The relationship between two ambassadors mentioned here, and I have only grown, have only grown stronger over the years, characterized by mutual support and warmth. Unfortunately, age will not allow them to be here today, but I don't know whether the representative of the Atta family is here. Well, so let me say thank you for the part you played and for you to be recognized. There are many others the Academy would like to recognize and honor, both in the private and public sector. I certainly would like to honor all the public servants Foreign Service and Home Service that worked with me to serve our nation over those hectic years. God bless you all. I extend my congratulations to other younger worthy private sector awardees, and the list I have is Alhaji Dangote, Mr. Tony Elumelu, and Chief Mike Adenuga, and of course I have added Herbert Wigwe posthumously because I know you would have probably mentioned him, but he has really received tremendous honor throughout the country in the past few weeks. Their tireless efforts and remarkable achievements are most commendable. To you awardees, I simply say thank you for all your hard work, which continue to earn you good reputation and success. And on the program for the formal inauguration of the Academy is the keynote address by Professor Benedict Orama, Orama, who is the intra-African, who is going to talk on intra-African economic cooperation and his work at Afreximbank. Is it Afreximbank? Is that the correct pronunciation? Thank you. Is making significant strides in this regard throughout any country or group of countries related to Africa, but we say Africa. The topic resonates deeply with me as I recall my involvement in laying the foundation for the economic community of West African states, on May 28. Can we argue that one? Is it 28 or 27? Yeah, well, I think we better look into that. I thought it was 27. But I think May 27th. So I think, let us say May 28, 27, 1975, which I did with all the heads of states and presidents of the 14 countries of the community, alongside my former colleague, President Yasimbe Ayadema of Togo, and all those 14 others. So with the recent development in the community, I would like to thank Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his colleagues for heeding the call to keep the union, to continue to keep the union together, no matter any difficulties on the way. Be patient, but pursue your effort to keep the union, the ECOWAS together. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the establishment of this caliber of academy of this caliber, bringing together some of our nation's brightest minds in international relations, is highly commendable. This is timely when our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is the leader of ECOWAS and quite visibly promoting Nigeria's global image and all efforts to save ECOWAS, while there are several government agencies that are created to perform the vital roles in formulating and implementing foreign policy. The wisdom and experience of private citizens with many years of foreign service are invaluable. I therefore urge the Academy for International Affairs, AIA, to offer your services and collaborate this and successive administration. To ensure that Nigeria's rightful place as a global voice and leadership is secured at all times. I request the government, present and those to come in the future, to consider and accept this proposal. Good luck, and do I say good hunting? Thank you all very much for your kind attention.
The inaugural conferment of fellowship and honors of very deserving and distinguished Nigerians. Thank you very much, sir. Just to announce that later this afternoon, immediately after this program here, the organization will be conferring on Ambassador Abdullahi Atta, CON, and Ambassador Sefi Judith Atta, CON, the honorary fellowship of the Academy in their residences here in Abuja immediately after this program. They are unable to be here with us because they are quite young in age. And in Lagos, the Academy would also confer on Isioma Philip Asiodu, CON, the same fellowship at a later date. And to say that the distinguished fellows of the Academy from the private sector that our chairman mentioned earlier on will be conferred with the fellowship at a date to be announced later. They are unable to be here with us, and we had had to skip that aspect of the program in deference to the painful passage of one of their colleagues in the private sector in Nigeria. Your Excellencies, most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we're effecting a slight structural adjustment in the program, and I invite my colleague to invite the Honorable Minister.
Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, of course you know the federal government, under the leadership of His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is trying to ensure that the renewed hope mantra cuts across diverse fields. And one of it is the foreign policy, which not too long, an ambitious, new foreign policy objective was launched. And that will be on the 4 Ds when we're talking democracy, development, demography, and diaspora. So the AIA is indeed timely, and no other time, to launch something of great initiative and to welcome to the podium Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, the man at the helm of affairs, of foreign affairs, pushing and changing the dynamics beyond the conventional. Please make welcome Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Your Excellency, former Head of State, General Yakubu Gowon, and I'd like to say how lucky we are to have him, his wise counsel, someone we can always run to whenever we need advice. And need I say also that Nigeria has 7 former heads of state living in peace, harmony, tranquility in Nigeria. I think it's a measure of how stable Nigeria is. Your Excellency, the representative of the Vice President, Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed, Your Excellency, the President of the Academy of International Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. I always regret that I narrowly missed being his student when he was on a sabbatical outside Nigeria after one of our military coups, and I was going to be his student, but unfortunately he came back to take on a higher office. President of the Afrexim Bank, Professor Benedict Orama, representative of the SGF, Your Excellencies, former ministers and former permanent secretaries here present, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the Academy, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have to forgive me because we have FEC today, Federal Executive Council meeting, which starts at 12, so I'm going to be rather brief, and I hope in doing so I don't come across as being uncivilized, because I think it was Winston Churchill that once said that no man in a hurry is quite civilized, so here goes. I would like to speak to the whole idea of setting up this think tank, which I think is very, very useful for us here in Nigeria, because in some countries you have politicians such as myself and others leaving office at the end of administrations and then going into think tanks to fine-tune their policies and their ideas. And then if they win elections, they come back out again. And of course, you also have diplomats and the diplomatic corps within such think tanks. Some are even exclusively for them. In other countries, you have political parties with think tanks, where again, the policies are fine-tuned after every so often, and they benefit from that. Here in Nigeria, we're yet to have that, so it is always very, very encouraging, and especially one such as this one with all the experience and the cerebral firepower therein. So I would like to assure that in implementing our foreign policy agenda, it is an agenda, it is not an objective. They are not objectives. The 4Ds, democracy, development, demography, and diaspora, are not foreign policy objectives. The objectives are already enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So we're not, that is sacrosanct. This is an agenda. And we will continue to rely on the think tank. And of course, we have constantly been engaging with its members anyway in doing our best to implement this agenda. And of course, one of its objectives is to provide support and training for negotiators and the art of negotiation, which is very key, because it's important that Nigeria has skilled interlocutors, more so now than at any point in time in contemporary history, because we have a lot of conflicts. At the same time, we have a lot of trade negotiations going on where Nigeria is involved. So we need the interlocutors with the right skill sets. It is important also that when we negotiate, we're putting our best foot forward. and of course that we negotiate 21st century agreements. So we're talking free trade areas. We don't want to be continuously pulled back to negotiating 20th century agreements that are mercantilistic in approach. So this should be the outlook, and that is why we need the academy also to help prepare us for such engagements. One other key area that is important, of course, is the issue of moving forward, is the issue of intellectual property. It is increasingly important for Nigeria. You see it cutting across different sectors, not just the digital economy, but also places where you least expect it. Culture. When we talk about restitution, we talk about digital images and all of that. This is the era of non-fungible tokens that are worth millions and millions of dollars, and we need to be prepared for that. So I'm very happy that Professor Orama is here delivering the keynote address, because he's the man that is at the coalface of some of these developments. And of course, the issue of inter-African trade, and the fact that I suppose Nigeria sometimes, we Nigerians don't celebrate and appreciate the early start we had in that sector. We had the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, which is a world-class infrastructure. I think it was started somewhere back in 1994, and it continues to improve. And even the rapid growth that we've experienced in startups, in digital technology and payment systems is riding off of the back of that. This is something that we need to continue to support, and I'm sure we'll hear much more from Professor Orama. Like I said, I hope that I have not come across as being uncivilized. Thank you very much for listening, and welcome home. Thank you.
Once again, let's appreciate the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar. Thank you very much for that insightful delivery. Of course, Nigeria has continued to position herself among Committee of Nations. If we look around us, beyond our resources, we have great minds with which we're all privileged, to be blessed with in this hall. And of course, there's no better person to be the pioneer president of this academy. And before we welcome on stage the founder and the president of the academy, Professor Bolaji Akinwumi, CFR, I'll just take you through a bit of his profile. Of course, he's a political professor of political science, and he served as Nigeria's External Affairs Minister. That was from 1985 to 1987. Akinwumi was appointed by the then head of military government of Nigeria, Ibrahim Babangida. And in his position as Minister of External Affairs, Professor Akinyemi headed numerous Nigerian delegations. That was in the 80s. Among the delegations he headed was Nigeria's delegation to the United Nations General Assembly, the Association of African Unity Council of Ministers, General Assembly Annual Session, the United Nations General Special Session on Critical Economic Situation in Africa, the Budget Session on the Council of Ministers of the Organization of African Unity. Among other reputable sessions, he led the Nigerian delegations back then. He has continued to contribute his own quota for national and economic prosperity of the nation. A prolific author, a great scholar, a true leader, one we can all not get enough from his expertise and wealth of experience. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, please make welcome the former Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, and former Foreign Affairs Minister and President, pioneer president actually, of Academy of International Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akin Yemi.
Our Chairman, His Excellency General Yakubu Gowon, please let me stand on existing protocol so that we can save time. The gentleman here brought the microphone to me to speak while sitting down. And I said to him, General Gowon stood up speaking, and you want me to sit down speaking. It's just not going to happen. One of the things I admire a lot about General Gowon is his style of speaking. He carries you along with him. You cannot be bored. And I have tried to copy that style. Not too successful, I must say. But I'm going to try something today. General Gowon had made reference to our relationship. The general has a large heart. He forgives easily. He forgets easily. When he was a head of state, I was a lecturer at the University of Ibadan. And this was in 1970. And you will recall that was the time of Aluta. Students and lecturers were always fomenting trouble for government. And in some places in Africa, you will end up in jail for doing that. But not in Nigeria. I recall on one occasion when General Gowon as visitor came to the University of Ibadan. And part of the ceremony was for him to plant a tree. And of course, we lecturers and students were in their Luther mood. Now, you are probably too young to remember what a Luther was all about. But this was, during the fight for independence in Mozambique. So it was a Portuguese term that we covered, but it meant fomenting trouble, always finding something wrong, whether with lecturers or with government. And General Gowon came and planted that tree. And then he said, I know you are going to pull up this tree. I will come back and plant that tree again. I mean, when you have a head of state who has that kind of attitude, you just couldn't help but even admire him for that. One other little matter I should bring up. I got home and I told my wife how And Luther went very well. We caused trouble. You know, we threw stones. And she said, you threw stones at the head of state? I said, no. We got the students to throw stones. Oh, she said, oh, I see. In any case, he's a handsome man. I said, so I said to her, what do you mean he's a handsome man? Where did you see him? Oh, he said as his car drove past, she was one of those who was waving in the, at the junction. I said, excuse me. I was doing a Luther, and you went and you were waving at the head of state. I said, you know what? Tomorrow morning, pack your bag, go to Dothan Barracks and stay there. She said, don't worry, they won't let me in any case. So in a way, my relationship with the general was one that has sunk into me. And you've got to listen to it. I've got to share this with you. When I was made a minister, my first trip to the United Kingdom, the Nigerian British Society decided to give me a reception. It was snowing very heavily. And not too many Nigerians showed up because there had just been a change of government, and not too many people wanted to be, associated with the new government. And then a taxi pulled up. And guess who came out of that taxi with an umbrella? General Gawan. He came to honor me. Sir, I will never forget all these issues and incidences which I have brought to the attention of our people who have honored us with their presence. I know we also, not only did my brother, not only was he your vicar in Jos, but we also belong to the same church at our Savior's Church in Lagos, where again we meet from time to time. So there you are. I'm happy you accepted our invitation, and I'm happy to see you here, sir. Normally, I should just stop at this point, because I know we came here to listen to the president of the Afrexim Bank. But I know that you want me to say a word or two about the Academy of International Affairs. As the Honorable Minister said when he was giving his speech, in several countries, you have institutions set up to tap into the brain of those who have served, not those who are serving, but those who have served, because the country recognizes that the brain doesn't stop working at the age of 70. The brain doesn't stop working when you retire. It keeps going. And the country continues to need that. But it's not just the country. You continue to need that. Because if you sit at home with a brain that is still bubbling and there are no avenues for you to use that brain, frankly, that brain starts to decay. And so, in setting up this academy, we are not only doing Nigeria a favor, we are doing ourselves a favor. And I hope that in our activities, this mutual favor will manifest itself not in antagonism but in cooperation. As I said, I had a speech written, but I thought I would borrow the style of General Gawan and just speak of the cuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Akinyemi. Please, once again, let's put our hands together to appreciate a man who has continued to contribute his own quarter. And he's not even tired. He's ready to do more. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. All right, and to prepare the minds, our minds rather, and to welcome our keynote speaker, let's first of all make welcome Professor Adewumi Falode, Associate Member and Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies. He will do us the honors, Your Excellencies, to introduce our keynote speaker. Please, a round of applause for him.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. Your Excellency, the chairman of today, General Yakubu Gowon, the president of the Academy of International Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akiwande, and the keynote speaker of today's event, Professor Benedict Oke-Orama, CON. You are welcome to this great event, sir. Now, to borrow from what my president just did because of time, let me stand on existing protocol. It gives me great pleasure to read the citation of our keynote speaker today. Now, if I am to read what I have, I probably will still be here till tomorrow. Now, because of time, I'll have to give us the abridged version of his citation. Professor Benedict Okechukwu Oke-Orama, CON, was born on 24 July 1961 in present-day Rivers State. Professor Orama attended the Merchants of Light School in Oba before obtaining a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics from the University of Ibadan in 1983. He obtained his master's degree and doctorate of philosophy from the University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, in the same field. He then went on to earn an advanced management certificate from Columbia Business School in New York. Professor Orama joined the Nigerian Export-Import Bank as an assistant manager in 1992. Then in 1994, he joined the African Export-Import Bank and served as a chief analyst and went through the rank until he became, in 2015, the third president of the bank, Afrexim Bank. Professor Orama is a chairman and member of different boards, both in Nigeria and internationally. Orama serves as a chairman or member of the board for a number of organizations. He is the chairman of the board of directors of the Fund for Export Development in Africa, the chairman of the management board of directors of the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, the current chairman of the executive committee of the Arab-Africa Trade Bridges, is also and a member of the Practitioners Advisory Board of the Institute of Trade and Innovation at Offenburg University, Germany. Professor Orama has received numerous recognitions and awards. In 2023, he was honored with the Congolese National Honor, the Officer of the Congolese Order of Merit. In 2022, he was honored with the Commander of the Order of Niger by the federal government of Nigeria. Earlier in 2019, he received the Russian Federation State Award of the Order of the Friendship for his role in promoting Russia-African trade and investment relations. In addition, Professor Orama was named Africa's 2023 Person of the Year by Forbes Africa. 2023, named as the Business Leader of the Year at CNBC, Africa's 11th All-African Business Leaders Awards. And in 2017 and 2022, African Banker of the Year by the African Bankers magazine. Professor Orama has been listed as one of the 100 most influential Africans by the New African magazines from 2019 to 2022, and among the top 100 influential Africans by Afrique magazine for multiple years since 2017. Thank you. He also holds an honorary doctorate from the Fefewemolowo University and Nnamdi Azikiwe University. Professor Orama has published several books, and of course, he has written several international articles in reputable journals. Once again, join me in welcoming Professor Benedict Orama. Thank you, sir.
Your Excellency, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is a special guest of honor represented today by his political advisor, Dr. Buba Ahmed. Your Excellency, General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR, who is the chairman of the occasion and former president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Members of the National Assembly here present, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, who have just left us, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akiyemi, CFR, founder and president of Academy of International Affairs, the service chiefs here present, members of the Diplomatic Corps, fellows at the Academy of International Affairs, captains of industry, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. May I stand on all existing protocol? If I missed you, please take it that I have recognized you. Please allow me to start by expressing my deepest appreciation to the organizers of this event for the high honor and privilege of addressing this esteemed audience on the occasion of the inauguration of the Academy of International Affairs. Congratulations to Professor Bolaji Akiyemi for his vision, inspiration, and hard work in setting up this remarkable think tank. This platform promises to be a crucible for insightful policy making in Nigeria and indeed Africa at large. With some of the best minds as members of the Academy, its policy outputs will certainly be priceless. I'm very proud to be associated with this, and I'm sure that the institution I lead, the Afrexim Bank, will be very pleased to support and partner this think tank. Because we believe that development starts from the brain. It's what we think that eventually becomes products we can see. And I hope, Professor, that we can discuss how we can support this and expand its reach to other parts of our continent. So you can now understand why I feel highly elated by the singular honor to address you today on a very important subject I have titled the AFCFTA, that's the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, Natural Resources, and Development Capital Formation in Africa. As a subject matter, I have spent considerable amount of time reflecting upon and researching. There can be no better place to begin outlining my thoughts than amongst a most accomplished audience this academy offers. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, upon gaining political independence, African leaders set their sights on attaining economic independence and bridging the development gap between the continent of Africa and the developed world. Regrettably, after 60 years of these efforts, progress remains short of expectations. The facts are there for all to see. Instead of being the breadbasket of the world today, our continent remains a basket case in many spheres. For instance, Africa now accounts for 39% of the global poor, despite accounting for just 17% of world population. The income gap between Africa and wealthy nations remains unacceptably high. While countries such as China and India have narrowed the differences, Africa's GDP per capita as a percent of the average GDP per capita of the USA still languishes at 3%, below where it was 40 years ago at over 8%. Africa is also lagging in other measures of development and global competitiveness. For example, Africa's share of global trade, which averaged over 5% in the 1960s and 1970s, has declined steadily and now averages under 3%. Africa's share of global manufacturing value added has largely remained flat at around 2% and only witnessed a marginal growth in the last decade. Across all of these macroeconomic indices, developing Asia, our co-travelers in other development in the 1960s and 1970s, has outperformed Africa over the same period. Volumes have been written and hypotheses floated to explain this sorry and indeed unacceptable state of affairs. My own thesis, which I'm very pleased to share and debate with you today, goes back to the basics, to the theory of economic growth, as expounded by the renowned economist Robert Solow and others. The long-term economic growth model developed by Robert Solow in 1956, in its simplest form, specified that output was a function of labor and capital. It follows, therefore, that any nation desirous of development must assess its endowments of these resources and find that combination of labor and capital that will yield the most optimal economic growth outcomes. Africa had always been and still is characterized by abundant supply of labor and severe scarcity of capital. It is for this reason that the marginal cost of labor has been quite low, while the marginal cost of capital had historically been prohibitively high. One would think that in a continent with such endowments and characteristics, the focus would have been on how to effectively harness the abundant supply of labor to drive capital formation and accumulation in a carefully orchestrated, phased strategy. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, instead of promoting and implementing policies that considered labor as our greatest resource, we had historically and even today considered our natural resources, the minerals under our ground, as our greatest resource. If I ask a Nigerian, what is your greatest resource? He would tell me we have so much oil. He won't tell me we have so many people. This misidentification of our resource endowment has several consequences. First, it deprioritizes human capital development, which is why we have an army of unemployed and functionally unemployable people. The American philosopher Eric Hoffer once wrote, and I quote, that those with the skills to move mountains have no need for the faith that moves mountains. So instead of creating mountain movers, we are creating fanatical worshippers of the mountains we wish to move. Second, it leads to ineffective industrial policies. That is this misidentification of our resource endowment. One with a single-minded focus on natural resource-based industrialization. This approach, when misapplied, leads to capital scarcity trap. It is inappropriate for a capital scarce economy to prioritize industrialization based on the processing of its raw materials if that activity is capital intensive. Because the cost of capital is high, the output that will come out of that process is likely to be uncompetitive, and the country is likely to end up carrying unsustainable debt burden. And that is the story of Africa today. The country that followed this path will be probably better off exporting such raw material in its raw form and finding an appropriate labor-intensive value chain in the same industry to focus on initially. Over time, it is likely to accumulate the necessary capital to integrate backwards. For example, instead of embarking on capital and energy-intensive project of processing bauxite into alumina, as Guinea has done, and which has had minimal economy-wide impact in that country. Perhaps it would have been better for Guinea to have built labor-intensive aluminium works industry that would have created thousands of jobs, developed skills, and build the foundation of an eventual backward integration and industrialization in aluminium smelting. Likewise, in labor surplus capital scarce economies interested in the textile industry, an optimal phased approach could be a focus on ginning and labor-intensive garment and apparel manufacturing, while integrating to much more capital-intensive spinning and the fabrics manufacturing when capital is accumulated. I dare say that all industrialized economies followed this phased approach. Having said this, there are instances where natural resource industrialization may be appropriate, as it may also be labor intensive. So what I'm saying is that before you pursue your resource-based industrialization, you have to assess the trade-off between capital and labor in that process. Third, the misidentification of our natural resource endowments has also led to the misuse of our natural resources. In many cases, these resources, when produced, are regarded as the end product rather than as a means to an end. The result is that they fuel consumption instead of investment and capital accumulation. Once we accept that labor is our most abundant resource and that capital is the binding constraint to our development, it follows, therefore, that countries endowed with mineral resources must understand that these resources are a source of capital and that they are therefore useless while under the ground. The goal should be to extract them as quickly as possible through various means, including stringent production obligations on concession holders, pledging them for loans, and selling them forward for cash.
When the asset is under the ground, it is of no use to the owner, in this case, the country. It does not even add to the GDP, which we have created more borrowing headroom for the country. When it is converted to cash asset, it becomes valuable and can be used to create a dynamic economy by building infrastructure that will attract investments in manufacturing and services, and the training of workforce, acquiring dynamic technology, and so on. And in fact, the reason that Africa has remained very poor is because we remain on the commodity level. We continue to look at our mineral resources as an asset, not a means to our end. Leaving minerals under the ground incentivizes their use to fund consumption instead of investment. I invite you to go back to history and check what Nigeria's oil revenues were used for in the national and state budgets. If they were strategically extracted or sold forward, the proceeds would have been used for specific development purposes to move us out of commodities that does not bring growth to anybody. If we agree that the private sector is better than the government in resource use efficiency, we must follow their cue. Every mining company sets aggressive extraction targets in concessions they are given because they know that leaving minerals under the ground is very risky, ranging from risk of technical and demand obsolescence to political, social, environmental, and other risks. The approach I'm proposing here is what China also followed. By using its natural resources to finance its infrastructure development, we then paved the way for it to attract labor-intensive industries from the US, Europe, Japan, Singapore, the industries Africa could not attract because Africa did not have the infrastructure. A report by the European Parliament in 2011 stated, and I quote, "Chinese engagement in other countries is influenced by China's own development experience. Indeed, the natural resource-backed loans employed by Chinese in Africa mirrors the long-term trade agreement signed in 1978 between China and Japan. According to this agreement, Japan pledged low-interest loans to finance export of $10 billion in industrial technology and materials to China in exchange for Chinese oil and coal. The Chinese, in turn, used the financing to hire Japanese firms to build China's main transport corridors, coal mines, and power grids. We must therefore reject the notion that Africa's comparative advantage rests in its raw materials. We are being told this by people who want us to keep those raw materials for them so they can come and be getting them cheaper and cheaper in real terms every year. If we now agree that labor-intensive manufacturing is what is required for us to begin to build capital for ourselves, let us then look at what is possible on our continent. And I say here that the opportunity that labor-intensive industrialization offers the continent is actually huge. We can potentially create a regional value chain of between $50 to $60 billion, rising to $100 billion per annum, by simply replacing the light manufacturers that currently come in from Asia, while capturing market shares in the US and Europe, given current geopolitical tensions. Making our people, our labor, the centerpiece of our industrial and indeed overall development policy requires that we unlock the AFCFTA. To achieve this, we have to understand and deal with the colonial strategy that kept us balkanized, as aptly captured by the colonial administrator Albert Sarraut, and I quote, "Economically, A colonial possession means to the home country simply a privileged market whence it will draw the raw materials it needs, dumping its own manufacturers in return. Economic policy is reduced to rudimentary procedures of gathering crops and bartering them. Moreover, by strictly imposing on its colonial dependency the exclusive consumption of its manufactured products, the metropolis prevents any effort to use or manufacture local raw materials on the spot and any contact with the rest of the world. The colony is forbidden to establish any industry, to improve itself by economic progress, to arise above the stage of producing raw materials, or to do business with the neighboring territories for its own enrichments across the customs barriers erected by the metropolitan power, unquote. So you can agree with me that to make progress, we have to reverse engineer this strategy. A key element of that reverse engineering project must be financial institutions that will be able to use intellectual capital and convening power to mobilize scarce domestic and external funding that will be required at every stage. We realize that it is the same misplaced priority that made it difficult for Africa to create strong development finance institutions that are adequately capitalized. Although there were efforts in many countries to create national development finance institutions, these were decimated by structural adjustment policies, exposing our countries completely to a lopsided global financial architecture with the consequences we all witness today. One of those consequences is a weakened financial services industry, which paved the way for foreign international banks to become dominant players on the continent. If, as I established earlier in this speech, capital is a binding constraint to Africa's economic growth, why then should Africans not be in control of the capital they need for development? Why is it that we allow others to control our capital? Americans control American banks. Europeans control European banks. Chinese control Chinese banks. Indians control Indian banks. It's only in Africa that others control our banks. At its peak, the share of banking assets held by foreign banks in Africa reached 73% in 2010. While there has been a significant reduction over the last decade, driven by a combination of factors, including, in fact, by the activities of Nigerian banks. The fact is that international banks still control a large portion of banking assets on the continent. It is now known that the key to the transformation of successful Asian economies was control over the domestic financial system. The primary goal of foreign banks in any economy is largely to support the businesses of their home countries. Mobilizing savings, especially from the rural areas, is the least of their priorities. Supporting local corporates and SMEs is usually reduced to corporate social responsibility rather than as a business proposition. Granting of credit tends to favor their home companies for the simple reason that any credit committee will be very wary of new names, let alone exotic ones. Further, major credit decisions in the subsidiaries of foreign banks based in Africa are made at their respective headquarters outside the continent, compounding the exotic name problem. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in order to reverse some of these fragilities, Africa created a number of multilateral financial institutions, including Afreximbank, the institution I lead. These institutions were created in a way that enabled them to mobilize capital from within and outside the continent, and to deploy the capital to serve primarily Africa's needs. To give them the best chance of success, However, it is important that these institutions themselves are adequately capitalized. Regrettably, African multilateral financial institutions are also among the least capitalized among peers in the global financial system. The top 5 regional and continental multilateral financial institutions on the continent, including African Development Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, Afrexim Bank, Trade and Development Bank, and others, together have a combined aggregate capital of $17 billion, or 0.7% of Africa's GDP. The combined total assets of these institutions was less than $90 billion as at 2022. For context, the Development Bank of Brazil, called BNDES, alone has shareholders' funds of $23 billion to secure access to 400 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. That arrangement, which was based on the first of its kind pooled procurement mechanism, made it possible for all countries, small and large, to secure the COVID-19 vaccine at the same price. Further, the bank put in place a pandemic trade impact mitigation facility under which it disbursed an aggregate of $8 billion during 2020 and 2021 to assist African Union member states to adjust in an orderly manner to the financial, economic, and health shocks caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. You will recall that at that time, there was no bank willing to do anything on the continent. So if we didn't have an Afrexim Bank, one wouldn't know what would have happened. And since we are in Nigeria, I can also point to the Dangote refinery and petrochemical plant, which became operational recently, incorporating the largest single-train refinery in the world and one of the largest nitrogen fertilizer and petrochemical plants globally. Afrexim Bank is the largest lender to the project, providing $2.5 billion directly and indirectly. But just as important is that much of the financing balance came from local Nigerian banks that are owned and controlled by Nigerians. This is exactly what we must aspire to do more of, to have African financial institutions funding critical projects in the country. If we didn't do what we did in Nigeria to strengthen the banking system, perhaps the Dangote refinery will emerge, but it will have been much more difficult. It's also thanks to the support Afrexim Bank is providing that Nigeria will soon boast a refining capacity of between 60 to 70% of its crude production, finally making Nigeria an emerging global refining hub. The combined lending in excess of $4 billion, Afrexim Bank has helped the Dangote refinery, the Port Harcourt refinery, supporting now the Bua refinery, and 2 other smaller refineries. Our goal is to turn the Gulf of Guinea as the destination for refining, so that never again we will be developing other parts of the world. When we make the Gulf of Guinea a refining hub, shipping will return to the Gulf of Guinea. The logistics business for oil will return to the Gulf of Guinea. Banking will return, and the insurance will return. So the effort we are making there is also extending to other countries, because along the Gulf of Guinea, we produce about 5 million barrels of crude. We want to ensure that we are able to create refining capacity to achieve at least 2.5 million barrels of crude per day, because we know that when we do it, other big investors will come to build refineries here. Similarly, Afrexim played a critical role in arranging the $2.9 billion financing towards the development of a hydroelectric dam project in Tanzania. The Rufiji Dam project, which is the largest intra-African EPC project, is being developed solely by African contractors, Egyptian contractors, and financed by Afrexim Bank and a group of Egyptian and Tanzanian banks put together by Afreximbank. The project is expected to generate 2,155 megawatts of electricity for Tanzania and create a reservoir in an area of 914 square kilometers, which will provide water, control flooding, and help with irrigation. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me now to outline the efforts Afreximbank is making towards contributing to the reverse engineering of the colonial strategy as espoused by Albasaro and which I quoted earlier. We recognize that Afreximbank was created some 30 years ago in anticipation of that day when a continental free trade agreement will be in place. Afreximbank has accordingly become a strong partner, indeed a financial arm of the AFCFTA implementation. Afreximbank provided and continues to provide grant support for the operations of the Secretariat, funding the activities required for the negotiation of the protocols, the day-to-day running of the Secretariat, and co-creating initiatives that are crucial to the success of a free trade agreement. We are proud to be contributing staff to the Secretariat, making sure that the salaries are paid and they don't have to run around begging for money to do their work. For instance, Afreximbank, working with the FCFTA Secretariat in developing the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. That payment and settlement system, which is now operational, is domesticating intra-African payments. Afreximbank has put in place an amount of $3 billion to back the clearing and settlement under the platform. So today it is possible for a Guinean to stream a Nigerian Nollywood movie by using Guinean francs to buy Nigerian naira. A currency trading platform that PAPS is now piloting will hopefully unlock airline ticket receipts and other funds blocked in various countries, easing the flow of funds and increasing businesses, and perhaps making it possible for airlines to increase destinations across Africa. Afreximbank, again in collaboration with the AFCFTA Secretariat, has put in place the $8 billion AFCFTA Adjustment Fund. The African Union appointed Afreximbank as the fund manager of that fund platform that will compensate countries for tariff revenue losses arising from AFCFTA implementation, while preparing companies and countries to adjust to the new trading regime in an orderly manner. Afreximbank is contributing $1 billion to this fund because we believe that it is the fund that will make it possible for some borders to remain open for free trade under the agreement. And because moving goods across the 110 borders that Africa has been a major challenge to intra-regional trade. Afreximbank is collaborating with the African Union Commission, the FCFTA Secretariat, and the COMESA to put in place a regional transit guarantee scheme. A pilot project in COMESA has already begun and will soon be extended to the entire continent. Under the arrangement, Afreximbank serves as the regional transit guarantor, making it possible for goods to move across borders under one transit bond. So today, making it possible for goods to move from Cape to Cairo without having to stop at every border. A $1 billion guarantee limit has been approved by Afreximbank to support this effort. In a market of 55 countries, harmonization of standards and conformity assessment is crucial for intra-regional trade to occur. Accordingly, through grant financing, Afreximbank has supported the African Regional Standards Organization to harmonize standards in the pharmaceutical and medical equipment, and now textile sectors. We're working together with the Council of Ministers of Trade as they negotiate trade in each sector to begin to harmonize standards in those sectors. So work is progressing with regard to other sectors. But we also know that given that establishing the standard is one thing and conformity assessment is another, AfriSMA has set up a subsidiary called the Africa Quality Assurance Center, which is developing testing, inspection, and certification centers across Africa. A project has been completed in Ogun State, planning to start projects, one in the northern part of Nigeria and another in the eastern part of Nigeria. But at the same time, projects are underway in Kenya, Egypt, Cameroon, Benin, Gabon, Togo, and other parts of Africa. Because we know that when we harmonize standards and we do not have the infrastructure to test, the harmonization will be for nothing, and trade would not be able to flow. With addressing the issues of trade information on the continent in mind, because we believe that trade information is the greatest constraint to intra-regional trade, we are making effort through so many avenues, including digital, to provide the trade information. In collaboration with the African Union Commission, the FCFTA Secretariat, and other partners, our president has put in place a biennial intra-African trade fair. The last edition was held in Cairo in November 2022, and deals in excess of $40 billion were concluded, and over 35,000 visitors participated. We've had 2 trade fairs, in 2018 again in Cairo, and in 2021 in Durban, South Africa. The 4th edition will be holding in Algiers in 2025. I want to state here that because of the requirements for space, requirements for hotel, Nigeria will need to do a lot more investment to be able to host this trade fair. Africa today spends an amount of about $6 billion abroad annually on medical tourism. Nigeria alone spends an estimated $1.5 billion annually. Beyond the financial cost, the number of people who die needlessly due to inadequate health care in our continent is large. Even sometimes people may have the money, but they do not have access to visas to travel when they need it. To combat this, AfriSMA created a subsidiary called, which has its headquarters here in Nigeria, and thanks to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for making it possible. So we created the Africa Medical Center of Excellence, which we are using. This entity is mandated to develop quaternary level hospitals across Africa in each sub-region of the continent. The first project is underway here in Abuja. We expect it to be completed February 17, 2025, which is a 500-bed hospital. It's a 500-bed hospital underway, which is being built in partnership with King's College Hospital, London, and Christie's Oncology Center, and University of Wisconsin Teaching Hospital. You are invited to visit the site, which is in Apo Village, near the Mechanic Village. Also by the hospital, following an agreement we entered into with King's College London, we will be developing a campus of King's College Medical School by the hospital. A low-hanging fruit for keeping our youthful demographics engaged and productive is through the creative industry. At AfriSMA, we run a program dubbed the Creative Africa Nexus, or CANEX for short, that seeks to facilitate the development and growth of the creative and cultural industries in Africa and the African diaspora. It provides a range of financing and non-financing instruments and interventions aimed at supporting trade and investment in Africa's creative industry, particularly in sports, music, arts, literature, culinary, and fashion. And we're having discussions with some of the sports organizers, the major sports organizers on the continent, to develop also sports brands which we can support. Finally, financing is key to supporting operators involved in intra-African trade. Our president pioneered intra-regional trade financing as an asset class, providing an aggregate of over $30 billion in the past 8 years. We plan to double this amount over the next 5 years. So today, intra-African trade financing accounts for 30% of the portfolio of Afreximbank. It is important to point out that Afreximbank has been able to make these modest contributions because the bank is predominantly African in ownership and control. African governments have been meeting their commitments to paying their shares of the bank's capital cost whenever made. And this has made it possible for management to deliver on our collective aspirations. One might then ask, would any of the above important interventions be possible without the role of an African institution such as Afreximbank? If those who thought of and worked so hard to create this bank, Dr. Babaka Ndiaye, who was then the president of the African Development, if he didn't overcome all the obstacles put in his way to create this bank, none of this certainly would have been possible. So it tells us that the new financial architecture we talk about must be a financial architecture rooted in our own continent. We should not go and expect that those who benefit with what exists will listen to us to change an architecture that works for them. It is a recognition of the need to take our destiny in our hands that African multilateral financial institutions, namely African Export-Import Bank, Trade and Development Bank, TDB, African Finance Corporation, African Trade Insurance Agency, African Reinsurance Corporation, Shelter Afrique Development Bank, and ZEPRI, that PTA Reinsurance Company, have come together to establish the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions, or the Africa Club for short. This alliance was established with the support of the African Union Commission on the 17th of February this year in Addis Ababa. And I have the honor of chairing the alliance. These institutions recognize that we face common challenges. And recently, we see those challenges. A lot of pushback from certain institutions. We saw international agencies questioning their multilateral status and requesting that they should be denied their treaty-based preferred creditor status and treated like commercial lenders, thereby subjecting them to significant haircuts in debt restructuring undertaken by African countries. This, if allowed to happen, will expose these institutions to significant financial risk and could lead to rating downgrades due to the perceived weakening of shareholder support by credit rating agencies. It also undermines continental development and integration ambition, as these African multilateral financial institutions are among the leading supporters of African integration through trade, investment, and infrastructure financing to support the implementation of the AfCFTA, and they use Agenda 2063. It is for this reason and more that the club was launched, as I mentioned earlier, in collaboration with the African Union Commission on the sidelines of the 37th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union under the patronage of His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of Ghana, in his capacity as the African Union champion for African Union financial institutions. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before I close, allow me to make some key summarizing points. First, we will not be able as a continent to build a reservoir of capital. We will not be able to accumulate capital required to fund that development unless we support our multilateral financial institutions. The support we received during the inauguration of the Africa Club, evidenced by the participation of the heads of state of Ghana, Zambia, and Kenya, and also other heads of states who sent representatives, is indicative of the shift towards the desired direction. We welcome the statement from His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of Ghana, in a recent joint publication in Economist with the heads of state from Kenya and Zambia. He wrote, and I quote, "It is critical that these institutions, that is the African Multilateral Financial Institutions, have the full weight of the AU member states behind them and the appropriate capital to continue serving Africa's development. To this end, Ghana has proposed that each African country go beyond its existing paid-in capital and invest a minimum of 30% of its sovereign reserves in African multilateral institutions," unquote. Second, the multilateral financial institutions will not be able to do it all by themselves. It is important that we make deliberate efforts to develop a thriving and well-functioning financial services sector, but in a way that ensures strong participation of Africa-controlled banks. Nigeria has actually done well in this regard, and is an example for many other African countries. One way to achieve the objective of having strong participation of Africa-controlled banks is by implementing strong local content regulations. And of course, a strong group of multilateral financial institutions will also support the financial services sector. In that regard, Afreximbank recently launched the African Banks Acquisition Strategy that supports homegrown banks through advisory and advocacy, strategic investments, and provision of financing and acquisition investments. Under this strategy, Afreximbank has supported a number of acquisitions already and disbursed over $750 million, making it possible for Africans to acquire banks being sold by exiting international banks. Third, we must pay attention to policies that help convert the continent's abundant labor supply into capital. Our industrial policies must take this into consideration. In this regard, I would like to congratulate His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu for the recent launch of the Outsource to Nigeria initiative by His Excellency Kashim Shettima, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is initiatives like this that will help take advantage of the abundant labor supply that we have by ensuring that the young demographic in Nigeria, and indeed in Africa, works in our favor today and in the future. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, please permit me to once again thank the leadership of the Academy of International Affairs for the opportunity to address you today. I also look forward to our developing a partnership that will make it possible for us to tap into your pool of knowledge. So many years, if you calculate what it will mean for all of you gathered here, and also with them bring also support, material and financial, to make sure that it becomes a win-win partnership for us and the continent. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. It's been an interesting afternoon. Thank you, Professor Haramma, for a wonderful session. Thankfully, we'll have a communique at the end of this. We'll have an executive summary of the lecture as well. And we're streaming live, so we're thankful to all of those that we reached out to who couldn't be here with us. Any moment now, we shall go on to the other aspect of the program, which is the climax of today's program, the induction of fellows of the Academy. Mr. Chairman, special guest of honor, a keynote speaker, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before the induction of the fellows of the Academy, it gives us especially great pleasure to first induct our Professor of International Trade and Finance and President of Afrexim Bank, Professor Benedict Okeorama, CON, and I have the special privilege and pleasure to invite to assist our chairman in robing our distinguished keynote speaker and President of Afrexim Bank, to assist the chairman in this process. May I invite Ambassador Dr. Godnose Bolade Gali and Professor Noble Lady Viola Aunleri to join along with the chairman, General Yakubu Gowon, to robe our keynote speaker and induct him as an honorary fellow of the Academy. And Professor Bolaji Akinteriwa, a senior colleague. Please, please. Thank you, sir. Professor Bola A. Akinteriwa. Thank you. Where is it? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Professor Akinteriwa and Professor Viola Onleri. Yes, please. So we need to step up there a bit so that we can. And then the chairman would. General, sir.
Indeed, an honor to have in our midst Professor Benedict Orama, CON, a man who has delivered a lecture, of course, that will open new frontiers in our minds and expand the scope, especially as Nigeria continues to project itself out there among Committee of Nations. A defining moment for the AIA, yeah. And while that is ongoing, other fellows to be inducted today should please get ready. Very shortly, we'll go into that properly.
Cover up that good head. Sorry.
That's the father of the nation there, General Yakubu Gowon, doing us the honors.
Okay. As chairman, of the occasion, I'm delighted to recognize you as Famin, the honorary, partner of the occasion. of the academy. Oh, this is, yeah. I see, okay. Okay. Oh, the camera. Yeah. So, this is.
A round of applause, please, for Professor Rama.
So, that is, yeah. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Congratulations to Professor Benedict Rama, CON, a man who is at the helm of affairs of Afreximbank, contributing substantial amount when you talk about investment across Africa. And of course, we're seeing the result of all that the Afreximbank is doing. Please, a round of applause for Professor Rama once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're getting to that point. Uncle Ohi.
Thank you very much, most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are now at that point where we should now induct fellows of the Academy. Academy of International Affairs, and I shall mention the names and they all be upstanding before we invite General Gowan to induct them all formally. To be upstanding, our chairman, Professor Bola J. Akinyemi, Professor Bola A. Akinteriwa, Ambassador Dr. Godnos Bolade Igali, ON, Professor Joy Ogu in absentia, but he's online. Quite a number of our inductees are online. High Chief Henry Odein Ajumogobia, SAN-OFRCON. Thank you, sir. Professor Noble Lady Viola Onleri. Ambassador Joe Keshi, OON. Ambassador Dr. Martin Uhomoiwi, OFR. Professor Tijani Mohammed Bande, GCON. General Martin Luther Agwai, CFR, NAM. Ambassador John K. Shinkaye, MNI, OFR. Ambassador Shegun Akpata, online. Professor Dr. Jayola J. Lewu, MNI, online. Professor Ambassador Akinjide Oshuntukun, online. Ambassador Hadiza Mustafa, Fellow War College. Professor Akin Oyebode, online. Professor Nuhu Yakub, OFR. Professor Kingsley Mogalu, OON, FCIB. Professor Hassan A. Saliu, FNMPSA. Professor Erusa Usagi, DSC, online. Ambassador Brownson N. Dede. Professor Jide Uweye. Major General Obidan Tahau Ethan. Ambassador Jibrin Chinade, online. And Professor J. Adewumi Falode. These are the fellows being inducted. We now invite His Excellency General Yakubu Gowan to formally induct our fellows. General, sir.
As chairman of the occasion, I hereby induct you all as president and fellows of the Academy of International Affairs, Nigeria. Congratulations. Congratulations to all of you. Done? Well, now you can put on your cap. I think the tassel should be on the left. The tassel should be on the left. Good. Excellent. Well done, and my congratulations, and I salute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. While the general takes his seat, would urge us to file out now for a handshake with the chairman, General Yakubu Gawan, and to receive your plaques from our chairman. So we'll go in that order once more. Oh, okay. Please, let's file out and receive our plaques. Ambassador Godness Igali, please step forth. Where's my list? So we should not say hi, Chief, but I'm minded to say Barrister Henry Oden Ajumogobia, please. Professor Noble Lady Viola Onlery, please step forth. Ambassador Joe Keshi, please. Thank you, sirs. We should try and see if we can face the cameras. It appears we are backing the audience. Let's face the audience, please. Let's face the audience, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. Ambassador Dr. Martin Uhamoiwi, OFR, please. His Excellency Ambassador Professor Tijani Mohammed Bande, GCON, welcome back to Nigeria. Former Director General, National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies, former permanent representative to the United Nations. We also specially welcome General Martin Luther Agwai, CFR, former Chief of Army Staff, former Chief of Defense Staff of Nigeria, former United Nations Force Commander in Darfur. I'm mindful not to put the retired after General. Ambassador John K. Shinkaye, MNR, OFR. Thank you, sir. Ambassador Hadiza Mustafa, Fellow War College. Former High Commissioner to Cameroon, former advisor, Africa Union, Special Representative and Advisor, Lake Chad Basin Commission. Professor Nuhu O. Yakub, OFR, Professor of Political Science, former Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, former Vice Chancellor, Othman Danfodio University, Sokoto, former Vice Chancellor, Sokoto State University, Professor Nuhu Yakub. Professor Kingsley C. Mogalu, ON, FCIB, Professor of Political Economy, former Deputy Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria, a Professor of Practice in International Business and Public Policy. Congratulations, sir. Professor Hassan A. Saliu, Professor of Political Science, President, Nigerian Political Science Association. Ambassador Brownson Ndede, former ambassador to Ethiopia, permanent representative to the Africa Union, OAU, and an OAU veteran. Thank you, sir. Professor of International Relations and Pro-Chancellor, Professor Jide Oweye. We welcome Major General Obidan Tahau Ithan. Thank you, sir. Pioneer General Officer Commanding GOC 7th Division of the Nigerian Army. Professor Adewumi Falode. Thank you very much. Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies. Other members who have been inducted today include Ambassador Jibrin Chinade, which has been done online, Professor Akin Oyebode, Ambassador Professor Akinjide Oshuntokun, Ambassador Dr. Jayola J. Lewu MNI, and Ambassador Shegun Akpata, who are unable to be with us here, but we are doing all of these online with them, including Professor Joy Ogu, OFR, Professor of International Affairs, former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, former Foreign Minister, and former Permanent Representative to the United Nations, and second Vice President of the AIA. Congratulations, one and all. We are indeed grateful.
Distinguished guest, will call on His Excellency, representative of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Ambassador Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed. He's a special advisor on political matters to the Vice President. Please, a warm round of applause for him. Thank you.
The chairman of the occasion, father of the nation, General Yakubu Gowon. I'm one of the very few people here who have the privilege to say my senior brother before I say the father of the nation. But we'll keep that secret to ourselves. The chairman and president of the academy, members of the academy, Your Excellencies, my little time in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs taught me that once you say Your Excellency, 10 different people turn back and answer. Everybody is their Excellencies. We've coming to the end of the time. I'll try and be quick. My principal, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, sends his best regards and asked me to represent him in view of the fact that we have a Federal Executive Council meeting today. I have a short speech to read on his behalf. It's a great honor to witness the birth of an academy that has great potential to make great improvements in the management of our foreign policy as we speak and in the future. It is even more remarkable that the inspiration and the impetus behind the formation of this academy was entirely the initiative of distinguished Foreign Service officers who have paid their dues to our country many times over. This day, history will record this day as a key benchmark in the place of our elite in keeping the faith that our country can continue to rely on them to place before it their entire a widely acknowledged truism that nations which know what was best for them trusted the conduct of their foreign policies only to their best and brightest. Allow me, therefore, to place on record today the nation's inestimable gratitude to all our Foreign Service officers who saw our nation through its best and most challenging moments. I hope there are enough serving Foreign Service officers in this building today who should draw inspiration from the undying passion of service to the fatherland from all the fellows who have just been inducted and other members of the Foreign Service profession. Your Excellencies, this academy is emerging at a period of its greatest need. The international environment is becoming increasingly more complex and more demanding of our best intellects, professionalism, commitments, and visions to find spaces within areas demanding consensus or in competition with others and managing conflicts. Nigeria lives with historic limitations and multiple contemporary challenges, and we will not claim to be self-sufficient in answers to dealing with poverty levels, limited resources for critical infrastructure, and raising skilled and educated younger Nigerians. We will leave our doors open to this academy for ideas and recommendations. This academy will be a think tank we cannot afford to ignore. We need your inputs. We need your inputs on achieving our priorities in the context of often harsh and unforgiving circumstances. This administration acknowledges the severity of our challenges as a nation. What we need is faith and support, the same assets that saw us through major challenges in our past. We need to begin to think of a future full of opportunities as well. In the next 2 decades, Nigeria will be one of the largest, youngest, and most enterprising population in a world that will be aging and changing. We need to survive our current challenges with courage, wisdom, patriotism, and a vision of a great future full of opportunities for the next generation of Nigerians. I'd like to congratulate Professor Bolaji Akinyemi and all the fellows of the Academy for stepping up when the nation needs them most. The selection of fellows of this Academy reminds Nigerians of its wealth in human resource, both active and relatively underutilized. I hope this Academy triggers an active interest among other professional groups to organize and place assets at the disposal of the nation. I must recognize the unparalleled commitment of the chairman of this historic event, General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR. Sir, you will always be the reference point for Nigerians when we speak of our great assets in leaders and elders. I look forward to submitting the lecture of Professor Benedict Orama, CON, under very close scrutiny and utilize many of his very useful insights and recommendations. I thank members of the global diplomatic community for accepting to be part of this great event. Thank you all. May God bless our country. Thank you.
We're indeed thankful to you, Your Excellency Hakim Baba Ahmed, former Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Affairs Ministry here. So like Ambassador Igali said, is rightly one of you. I'm sure in the next list of fellows, our special guest of honor will be one of them. Thank you very much, sir. We are indeed grateful. Thank you for representing His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, so capably well. Mr. Chairman, most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we're to entertain some goodwill messages, but we're not to Ambassador Lewu, Ambassador Dr. Jayola Lewu MNI is to reach us online with a goodwill message. If we are ready, we'll take that before we. And then we'll also have Professor Oshuntokun to also speak to us. Are we taking? So, Ambassador Lewu, please unmute yourself and let's hear you. Thank you. Oh, yes, we're here now, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Prof.
Yeah. Your Excellency, the revered former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, and all other excellencies, and my dear friend, Professor Bolaji Akiemi, who inspired the formation of this academy. I'm very happy to be part of it. I would have wanted to come to Abuja, but for some problems regarding my current state of health. But I'm okay. I'm not on the departure lounge yet. We hope, and I wish this academy all the best and all the successes that it will attain. It is made up of distinguished gentlemen, former ministers, academics like myself, who have had opportunity to serve at various levels of government. We hope that we will make all our experiences available to this academy so that when it speaks, or when our chairman or president speaks, he will be speaking with solid authority. Thank you very much. God bless you all as you go back home.
Thank you. Let's put our hands together for Prof. Can we still see Ambassador Lewu, if we've been able to, if we can still hear from you, please.
Hello?
Yes, oh, fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're able to hear me now?
Yes, we do, sir.
Oh, I wish to express my appreciation for the honor and privilege of being a fellow of the Academy, and to congratulate all my colleagues and the honorary fellows who have been awarded their fellowship today. I would like to express our sincere appreciation to our chairman, His Excellency General Yakubu Gowon, who has been a very humble and honorable personality, a father of the nation, a father of Africa. We thank you, sir, for honoring our invitation to the inauguration. I would like also to express my sincere appreciation as an economist too, to Professor Orama for his wonderful lecture, which he gave. His lecture, no doubt, is a stimulus to the Nigerian and African countries, which I hope will be a catalyst to wake them up in the area of intra and inter-African trade and utilization of capital and labor for the success and development of Africa. We are happy that we are not going to depend on just foreign currencies for our exchanges. We now know that Dr. Rama has found a way of making Africans to trade in their own currencies. We thank you for your suggestions, which I think the Academy will look at very critically and hopefully come up with our own ideas of how we should move ahead. I would like to thank Professor Akinyemi for his efforts in bringing about a new think think tank for the nation, which we hope will be the best and brightest. I want to thank all of you for today, and I wish us a happy weekend, a happy time in Nigeria, and a happy time everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Jayola J. Lewu, MNI. I'm told that we can take one more. This time around, Professor of International Law, former Vice Chancellor, University of Ado-Ekiti, Pro-Chancellor, Professor Akin Oyebode. Do we have him online, please? Prof, are you ready for us? Speaking your ceiling or the window instead of your... Professor Akin Oyebode, please. Are you with us, sir?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Please, sir.
But thank you very much for your kind invitation. I just wanted to be a quiet onlooker. But since you've requested me to speak, let me begin by congratulating Professor Bolaji Akinyemi for his wonderful initiative in formally bringing into being the Nigerian Academy of International Affairs. It's a great day for Nigeria. It's a great day for all the fellows, their friends and relatives. We're indeed happy and grateful to God for witnessing this day. And we wish ourselves the very best in continuing to subscribe and contribute to the goodness of Nigeria. I thank you very much for the kind invitation.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we've almost come to the end, but we must express our gratitude to one and all. And I would have the special privilege and pleasure in a moment to invite another professor and the former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIA, and Secretary General of the Academy to move the vote of thanks. Before then, permit me to specially recognize the presence of Ambassador Wadibia Anyanwu, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Ma. We are indeed honored by your presence. We also wish to specially recognize the presence of the former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Labor, Dr. Timiebi Korikpamo Agari. Thank you, Ma. We are indeed honored by your presence. May we now welcome Professor Bola Akinteriwa. Okay, that's yours.
When God decided that for whatever he does for human being, we must always say thank you. If God has so decided, why should we act contrarily? We are children of God. And in expressing gratitude, the word gratitude itself is from gratitudo, from Latin, expressing appreciation. Now, what we are doing today, which explains why we should be grateful, I think I will not take much of your time. I will only remind you that in 1986, it was the time of Bolaji Akiwande Akinyemi consultation doctrine. Academic scholars, because of the misunderstanding between Muammar Gaddafi, Libya, and the US, scholars asked, Professor, why is it that you preach on the one hand African unity, but you are not extending this unity, this understanding. The French call it entente, entente cordiale. Why are you not extending it to Libya? Bolaji Akinyemi said, well, why do you want me or any other person to take Nigeria for granted? Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, by the time he was creating problems for himself at the level of Libyo-American relations, he didn't consult with us. Don't take Nigeria's offer of assistance, solidarity for granted. Consult us every time you need our support. That was the genesis of consultation doctrine in Nigeria's foreign policy. In 1987, the Technical Aid Corps Scheme. Please, this same Bolaji Akinwande Akinyemi, you can ask yourself how his own cerebrum is working. Because his own cerebrum is always working conjecturally. The methodology is not always to look backward, but to see what is most likely to happen in the future. The legacy of Nigeria's foreign policy as of today, one major element of it all, is this Technical Aid Corps Scheme. I say I wouldn't bother you too much, but I will still tell you, what about the concert of medium powers? The history and the historiography of that particular concert of medium powers led to recoinage of the word to Lagos Forum. What Professor Akinyemi is simply saying is that, look, whatever you have, you can take advantage of it and still get to where you want to get to. Some scholars, observers have said that, you see, if you do not reshape, reconstitute the domestic level, you won't forge ahead. No, Professor Akinyemi doesn't believe in that. In fact, the setback you have at the domestic level is precisely what you need to reproject yourself internationally. And that was the idea. I won't take much of your time. Vote of thanks is what I'm supposed to give. But you see, this idea of an academy of international affairs, when he sleeps, he thinks. He goes to toilet, he thinks. He is sleeping on the bed, he thinks. He is now thinking of saying, look, at the end of the day, even if I'm aging, why should I die and not see a better Nigeria? Why should I be a politologist? And then we are having this problem. So if we are talking, going on with one Nigeria here, please, our president, stand up for special recognition so that we are to thank you. Thank you, sir. The good people of Nigeria, whether you like it or not, you will live long and well. Amen. Thank you, sir. Now, the gratitude from the president of the academy. In 1967, by this time, we used to have this type of news magazine, Flamingo. It was there. Someone said, look, in the radio program, the slogan was that, Taban tetu, walo mojuku wafumi. Simply meaning that, look, General Gowon didn't want war, made it police operation. But the way he was handling that one, people were so much enthused, and they said, go on, with one Nigeria. That was the slogan, especially February 12, 1970, when General Philip F. Young surrendered unconditionally to say, let us move forward. Now, in going on with one Nigeria, the manifestation is today. That's what we are seeing. General Gowon wants, and I remember a particular photograph on the front page of Daily Times. They say Yakubu and Victoria Gowon. It's on the second column of that particular newspaper to the right. So you see, we have Gowon yesterday, we have Gowon today, and we will, in fact, I will continue to Gowonize you as from tomorrow. General Gowon, we are sincerely grateful. You have responded very well to what Professor Jerry Garner said. When you are a chairman, you chair well. When you are a president, you preside well. You have done very well, and we have just seen it today. Should I forget I will even say the econometric professor giving us the dynamics of how to forge ahead, Professor Benedicta. It's Benedict, but you know, not only that, you know that the Catholic pontiff will say Benedicto Rama. He has really professed, and we cannot expect anybody participating on this platform and not being, you know, the best of the best. We are sincerely very grateful. You have done very well. As a professor, you have lifted all the other professors, because a professor who does not profess well. So it's not like when Fela Anikulapo Kuti will say, look, yes, you know Bisuegbe. We thank God. Thank you very much for calling and coming. The sponsors, can we easily forget? Can we forget? You know, I do not want to tugarize you. The Honorable Minister, he decided to honor us, bearing in mind that he still has an assignment elsewhere. Look, how will we not be very grateful to all these people? Perhaps more importantly, who are more important? The people that have come, seated here quietly, they are more important. They have taken a lot of risks to get here. Petrol is very expensive. They have bought. Everybody is afraid of kidnapping. They took the risk, and they are here. And more significantly, when you see an Inkem Anyawu, we refer to him as ambassador with capital A. They use the ambassador small a for, you know, the corpus. The 1987 set, people who are sent abroad on behalf of Nigeria to go and lecture, to go and do all this. Look at yourself. Martin Homoibi, look at yourself. Joe Keshi, look at yourself. You are sitting down with a Brownson Dede here. Look at yourself again. When, for instance, if you double me, I will what? I will tackle you. If, for instance, you want to embarrass me, I will ajumagobia you, because he's a lawyer. These are eggheads, seated here, generals. Martin Luther Aguai, member. Igali, Gideon Weye, Hassan, ambassadors of repute. Please, you accepted to be members. If you have been invited and you refuse to come, are we going to have, you know, this type of gathering? Very honestly, Ambassador Turaya is no longer here because, is he still there? No, it's not there. What I'm trying to say in essence, in systemic methodology, when we are doing analysis, you look at all the elements, all the inputs. You are the elements of this academy. So what this particular gratitude is all about is nothing more than a special request to say that, look, the issue is not the induction, but more importantly, how do we move forward? The thinker, the critical thinker, Professor Akinyemi, will be happier to have the academy succeed. Engage in critical thinking, in diplomatic engagements in all its ramifications. I think he will be happier. Even if he wants to go to heaven, because we know how God works too, the gate is there in heaven. They don't always open for everybody. The gate can be locked. So if you think you want to die, you die, then they will send you back. You will wake up. It is on this note that I want to specifically thank everyone. In fact, I compelled my wife to come and join me here. I thank you especially, Mrs. Akitenwa, for coming here. On this note, I do not want to leave you. I'm only going. Thank you to all of you. Mrs. Akintenwa, order has come from above. Yours obediently, stand up for recognition. Mrs. Her Excellency Igali has also come to yes. You can see what makes the ambassadors tick. They are there. They keep their women very young, you know, very attractive, and God says you should not be guilty of covetousness. Thank you, ma. Mommy, you have done very well. If you had not stood by him like a rock of Gibraltar, because he was the one, I want to conclude actually the gratitude by talking about your husband, because he is the senior messenger. I'm a junior messenger. So when the president of the academy gives instruction, he runs up and down. If you have not stayed there, it will be a different kettle of fish entirely. And in this case, please stand up specially. Can you put your hands together? All right. On this note, I am not leaving you, but I am going. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Bola Akinterewa. Please, let's appreciate Prof again. Prof has really excited us this afternoon with his good sense of humor. Okay, very quickly, we would like to recognize the presence of Commandant, Defense College, who is here in our midst. Sir, thank you for coming. Thank you for your presence. We'd also like to recognize Ambassador Musa, who is now the Permanent Secretary. He used to be at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but he's now in the PAMSEC, Ministry of Petroleum Resources. Former, I beg your pardon. Okay. But you're welcome, sir. Thank you for choosing to be part of this remarkable history-making day. We want to appreciate the diplomatic community, the foreign ambassadors who are here in our midst. We do appreciate your time, you know, the resources, the energy you put in to collaborate with Nigeria. Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, we have come to the end of this beautiful history-making day. Okay, I've just been informed that Barrister Henry Ajumogobia. His wife is also here with him. Please, ma'am, can you stand up for recognition since all the wives okay, great. Thank you so much, ma'am. You know what they say, behind every successful man, there's always a strong woman backing and pushing him to succeed, right? All right, we want to thank each and every one of you. For some of us who are coming up from the younger generation, when I think of the generational gap between myself and all the great minds present here, it is an honor and a privilege, a rare privilege to be here. Tap in from your wealth of experience and expertise. Thank you so much. And like Professor Orama has said, it is time to look at the policies of our abundance of labor so that we can see the supply of capital, not just for Nigeria, but for and Africa as a whole. Uncle Ohi? Okay, don't forget to, after we call for the national anthem, there will be a group photograph of all the inducted fellows here present, together with our able chairman, His Excellencies. So please, just immediately at the foyer downstairs, please. Thank you very much. And please, I'd like to crave your indulgence while we ponder on the thoughts that has been shared and getting ready to kick off the AIA. Please be upstanding for the national anthem. Thank you very much. So please, kindly, with your permission, Your Excellencies, let's just go out to the foyer downstairs for the group photograph. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.